The Khwarazmian Empire, how Genghis Khan shattered an ancient superpower. Welcome to Pages from History, where the greatest stories of human civilization unfold before your eyes. Today we journey to the heart of Central Asia to witness the rise and catastrophic fall of the Khwarazmian Empire, a superpower that ruled vast territories before facing the unstoppable force of Genghis Khan. Stay with us until the end to discover how pride and miscalculation brought down one of history's mightiest empires. First, the rise of the Khwarazmian Empire. The sun rose over the ancient city of Gurganj in the year 1194, casting golden light across marble palaces and bustling bazaars where merchants from distant lands traded silk and spices. Here in the fertile lands between the Amu Darya and Sir Darya rivers, a new power was emerging under the ambitious leadership of Sultan Ala ad-Din Tikish. The Khwarazmian dynasty had served as governors for decades, watching greater empires rise and fall around them while they quietly accumulated wealth and military strength. Tikish possessed the vision of a conqueror and the patience of a chess master, waiting for the perfect moment to transform his vassal state into an independent empire. When the Seljuk Empire began fragmenting into warring factions, Tikish struck with calculated precision, annexing territories that doubled his realm within 5 years. His armies moved like desert winds, swift and overwhelming, capturing fortified cities before their defenders could mount effective resistance. The Sultan understood that true power required more than military conquest alone, so he invested heavily in infrastructure, building roads and caravanserais that connected distant provinces. Trade flourished under his protection, and merchants praised his name in markets from the Caspian Sea to the borders of India. Persian scholars and Islamic jurists flocked to his court, transforming Gurganj into a center of learning that rivaled Baghdad and Cairo in intellectual brilliance. The Sultan patronized poets and astronomers, mathematicians and philosophers, creating a cultural renaissance that would define his dynasty's legacy. By 1200, the Khwarazmian Empire controlled the most profitable section of the Silk Road, collecting immense tariffs from caravans carrying Chinese silk westward and European gold eastward. This strategic position generated wealth beyond imagination, filling royal treasuries with gold coins and precious gems from every corner of the known world. Tikish's son Muhammad grew up in this atmosphere of triumph and expansion, trained from childhood to believe his empire was destined for eternal greatness. The young prince learned statecraft and warfare, but perhaps his tutors focused too much on pride and too little on wisdom. When Tikish died in 1200, Muhammad inherited an empire at the peak of its power, controlling territories from Afghanistan to the Caucasus Mountains. The new sultan possessed his father's ambition but lacked his diplomatic restraint, a combination that would prove catastrophic. Muhammad expanded the empire further, conquering Persia and extending his domain to include some of history's greatest cities including Samarkand, Bukhara, Merv, and Herat. These urban centers gleamed with architectural marvels, their mosques and madrasas decorated with intricate tilework in brilliant blues and golds. The Sultan commanded armies numbering in the hundreds of thousands, with elite cavalry units that had never known defeat on the battlefield. His generals boasted that no force on earth could challenge the military might of the Khwarazmian Empire. By 1218, Muhammad ruled over 40 million subjects, making him one of the most powerful monarchs in the world, second perhaps only to the distant Chinese emperor. Yet in his palace in Samarkand, surrounded by luxury and flattering courtiers, the Sultan had no idea that his empire stood on the brink of annihilation. Second, the golden age of prosperity. Samarkand stood as the jewel of the Khwarazmian Empire, a city where culture and commerce intertwined beneath towering minarets that seemed to pierce the heavens themselves. The Registan Square bustled with activity from dawn until dusk, as merchants displayed carpets from Persia, porcelain from China, and glassware from Syria. The city's architecture reflected the empire's wealth and sophistication, with buildings adorned in geometric patterns and calligraphic inscriptions celebrating divine wisdom and imperial power. Gardens bloomed within palace courtyards, where fountains cooled the desert air and nightingales sang among pomegranate trees laden with fruit. Bukhara rivaled Samarkand in splendor, its libraries housing thousands of manuscripts on subjects ranging from astronomy to medicine, philosophy to engineering. Scholars debated in its madrasas about the nature of existence and the movements of celestial bodies, advancing knowledge that would influence civilizations for centuries. The common people prospered too, as the empire's stability allowed farmers to cultivate their fields without fear of raiders, producing abundant harvests of wheat and cotton. Artisans perfected their crafts in workshops where they created intricate metalwork, stunning ceramics, and textiles so fine that European nobles paid fortunes to acquire them. The Sultan's court attracted talent from across the Islamic world, with poets composing verses in Persian that celebrated the empire's glory and the ruler's generosity. Musicians played instruments from many lands, blending melodies from Arabia, Persia, and Central Asia into harmonies that enchanted listeners in palace halls. Trade caravans entered the empire daily, their camels loaded with goods worth more than many European kingdoms possessed in their entire treasuries. The Sultan's customs officials grew rich from taxation, and a portion of this wealth funded magnificent public works, including hospitals, schools, and bridges. The empire's military might ensured that bandits dared not attack merchant caravans, while diplomatic marriages and treaties maintained peace with neighboring kingdoms. From the Caspian shores to the Hindu Kush mountains, travelers marveled at the order and prosperity they witnessed in Khwarazmian lands. Sultan Muhammad commissioned grand construction projects, including a palace in Samarkand so vast it required 3 years and 10,000 workers to complete. Its halls featured marble columns imported from distant quarries, and its ceilings displayed gold leaf that caught sunlight streaming through geometric lattice windows. The imperial mint produced coins stamped with the Sultan's name and titles, circulating throughout Asia and becoming a standard of reliable currency from Constantinople to Delhi. This monetary stability further enhanced trade and made the empire's merchants the most trusted partners in international commerce. Religious scholars enjoyed royal patronage, producing theological works and legal commentaries that shaped Islamic jurisprudence across the Muslim world. The Sultan presented himself as a defender of the faith, funding mosques and supporting Sufi mystics who attracted followers throughout his realm. Yet beneath this golden surface, pride and arrogance were growing like poison in the empire's heart, particularly within the Sultan himself, who believed his power absolute and unchallengeable. His advisors rarely contradicted him, and those who suggested caution in foreign affairs found themselves dismissed or exiled from court. Third, the fatal insult that sparked destruction. Far to the east, beyond the endless steppes where grass stretched to the horizon, another power was rising under a leader the world would remember as Genghis Khan. The Mongol Khan had united the nomadic tribes and forged them into a military machine unlike anything civilization had ever encountered. In 1218, Genghis Khan sent a trade caravan to the Khwarazmian Empire, carrying valuable goods and diplomatic messages proposing peaceful commercial relations between the two powers. The caravan consisted of Muslim merchants whom the Khan trusted, traveling under Mongol protection with letters sealed with the Great Khan's personal seal. The caravan arrived at Otrar, a border city governed by Inalchuk, a cousin of Sultan Muhammad who held the title of governor and commanded the local garrison. Inalchuk examined the caravan's goods and grew suspicious, convinced without evidence that the merchants were actually Mongol spies gathering intelligence about the empire's defenses. The governor seized the caravan's wealth, valued at hundreds of thousands of gold coins, and imprisoned the merchants in the city's fortress. He sent urgent messages to Sultan Muhammad, claiming he had uncovered a Mongol plot and requesting permission to execute the supposed spies. Sultan Muhammad received the news at his palace in Samarkand, where his advisors debated the proper response to this delicate diplomatic situation. Some counselors urged caution, warning that the Mongols had proven themselves formidable warriors in their conquests across the steppes, but the Sultan dismissed these concerns with contempt. Muhammad authorized Inalchuq to do as he wished, underestimating the Mongols as mere barbarian horsemen who posed no serious threat to his mighty empire. The governor returned to Otrar and ordered the merchants executed, their bodies thrown outside the city walls while he kept their wealth for himself. When news of the massacre reached Genghis Khan in Mongolia, the Great Khan's face darkened with rage that his generals had rarely witnessed in their years of service. He immediately sent 3 ambassadors to Sultan Muhammad, demanding the extradition of Inalchuq for punishment and compensation for the murdered merchants. The Mongol ambassadors arrived at the Sultan's court in formal diplomatic robes, presenting the Khan's demands with the gravity such an insult deserved. Sultan Muhammad received them in his throne room, surrounded by courtiers who whispered that these strange-looking envoys should be taught a lesson about Persian superiority. In an act of breathtaking foolishness, the Sultan ordered 1 ambassador beheaded and the other 2 shaved and sent back to Mongolia as a deliberate insult to the Khan. This violation of diplomatic immunity and disrespect for ambassadors represented the gravest offense in the code of international relations that even warring kingdoms respected. When the mutilated ambassadors returned to Genghis Khan and described their treatment, the Great Khan climbed a mountain alone and prayed for 3 days and nights. He emerged from his meditation with a decision that would reshape the course of history and doom the Khwarazmian Empire to destruction. Fourth, the Mongol storm descends. In the spring of 1219, Genghis Khan assembled an army of over 200,000 warriors, the largest Mongol force ever mobilized for a single campaign. The Khan divided his forces into multiple columns, each commanded by his most brilliant generals, men who had conquered kingdoms and never known defeat. The Mongols moved across the steppes with terrifying speed, covering distances that should have taken months in mere weeks, their scouts mapping every route and water source. Sultan Muhammad received intelligence reports about the approaching army, but refused to believe the numbers his spies reported, dismissing them as exaggerations meant to spread panic. The first Mongol column struck Otrar with the fury of a thunderstorm, surrounding the city with siege engines and cutting off all supply routes. Governor Inalchuq, the man whose greed had triggered this catastrophe, watched from the walls as Mongol warriors prepared to exact their revenge. The siege lasted 5 months as Mongol engineers constructed siege towers and catapults that hurled stones and flaming projectiles over the city walls day and night. When the walls finally collapsed, Mongol soldiers poured through the breach, showing no mercy to defenders who had participated in the murder of the Khan's merchants. Inalchuq retreated to the citadel for a final stand, but the Mongols captured him alive, reserving a special punishment for the man who had started this war. They poured molten silver into his eyes and ears, ensuring his death would be as agonizing as the suffering he had caused. While Otrar burned, other Mongol columns advanced on Bukhara, one of the empire's greatest cities, approaching from multiple directions to prevent any coordinated defense. The city's garrison, numbering 20,000 men, attempted a desperate nighttime breakout, but were annihilated by Mongol cavalry in a battle that lasted until dawn. Bukhara's citizens opened their gates in surrender, hoping for mercy, but Genghis Khan himself entered the city and delivered a chilling speech in the Grand Mosque. He told the assembled population that he was the punishment of God, sent because of their sultan's sins, and that their only hope for survival lay in complete obedience. The Mongols systematically looted Bukhara's treasures, loading thousands of camels with gold, books, and artworks accumulated over centuries of prosperity. Then they set fire to the city, and the flames consumed libraries containing irreplaceable manuscripts, reducing centuries of scholarship to ash. Samarkand fell next, despite its massive walls and garrison of 100,000 defenders, as the Mongols employed psychological warfare alongside their military superiority. They drove captured civilians before their advancing ranks, forcing the city's defenders to either kill their own people or allow the Mongols to approach the walls. Sultan Muhammad, paralyzed by fear and indecision, fled from Samarkand before the siege began, abandoning his subjects and his empire to save his own life. His cowardice shattered what remained of his army's morale, as soldiers realized their supreme commander had deserted them in their darkest hour. The Sultan fled westward across his crumbling empire, pursued by a Mongol detachment of 20,000 riders commanded by generals Jib and Subutai. These legendary warriors hunted Muhammad across Persia and into the Caucasus, never allowing him more than a few days' rest before appearing on the horizon again. Fifth, the empire's final hours. Muhammad's flight became a desperate race for survival as Mongol pursuers seemed to anticipate his every move, appearing from impossible directions with relentless determination. The Sultan's once mighty army had disintegrated into scattered bands of refugees, each group fleeing independently toward what they hoped would be safety. Cities that had flourished for centuries opened their gates in surrender, hoping to avoid the fate of Bukhara and Samarkand, but often the Mongols destroyed them anyway. Merv, one of the largest cities in the world with over 1 million inhabitants, was systematically depopulated, its people slaughtered in an act of terror meant to discourage resistance. The Sultan's mother, Turkin Khatan, who had wielded enormous political influence during his reign, was captured by Mongol forces and sent to Mongolia as a prisoner. She, who had lived in palaces and commanded ministers, now traveled in a simple cart, guarded by warriors whose language she could not understand. Muhammad's son Jalal ad-Din attempted to rally resistance, gathering the remnants of imperial forces for desperate stands against the Mongol advance. He won several tactical victories through brilliant generalship and personal courage, but each victory merely delayed the inevitable rather than changing the war's outcome. Sultan Muhammad himself never stopped running, his health deteriorating from stress and exhaustion as the Mongol hunters closed the distance week by week. He reached a small island in the Caspian Sea in late 1220, a broken man who had once ruled 40 million subjects but now commanded nothing. On that desolate island, far from the magnificent palaces where he had hosted poets and scholars, Sultan Muhammad II died alone, possibly from pneumonia or exhaustion. The man who had inherited one of the world's greatest empires perished in obscurity, his body buried in an unmarked grave that history would never locate. Meanwhile, Genghis Khan's armies continued their systematic destruction of Khwarazmian cities, ensuring that this empire would never threaten the Mongol world again. Engineers diverted rivers to flood agricultural lands, destroying the irrigation systems that had supported civilizations in Central Asia for thousands of years. By 1221, the Khwarazmian Empire had ceased to exist as a political entity, its territories absorbed into the expanding Mongol Empire. The cities that had shone like jewels along the Silk Road lay in ruins, their populations scattered, their libraries burned, their prosperity reduced to memory. Jalal ad-Din fought on for years, becoming a heroic figure of resistance. But even he eventually fell in battle against enemies taking advantage of his desperate situation. The last prince of the Khwarazmian dynasty died, sword in hand, maintaining his honor even as his empire vanished into history's shadows. Scholars estimate that the Mongol invasion killed between 11 and 15 million people in Central Asia, fundamentally altering the region's demographics and culture. The destruction was so complete that some cities never recovered, remaining ruins centuries later, silent monuments to the consequences of one man's pride. The Khwarazmian catastrophe sent shockwaves across the medieval world as kingdoms from Europe to China learned that defying the Mongols brought total annihilation. Genghis Khan had sent a message written in blood and fire that would echo through generations, changing forever how nations conducted diplomacy and war. The fall of the Khwarazmian Empire stands as one of history's most dramatic examples of how pride and misjudgment can destroy even the mightiest civilizations. What began with the murder of merchants and the insult of ambassadors ended with millions dead and one of the world's great cultures reduced to ruins. This catastrophe reminds us that true strength requires not only military power, but also wisdom, diplomacy, and the humility to recognize when we face forces beyond our control. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. If this story moved you, please show your support by liking this video, sharing your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribing to Pages from History to discover more extraordinary tales from humanity's past. Let us know which civilization or historical event you'd like us to explore next. Until our next journey together, remember that the lessons of history remain forever relevant to those willing to learn them.